I do not know who precisely is watching this, but if you happen to be one of the people that knew Meadow Jade, someone who cherishes her, okay, I feel that I know her. I feel like she's closer to me than my very own jugular, and I think I would not have life without Meadow. I rely more on her than it would be like not. I was so freaking dead. It was like having a cut jugular. The way that I actually got to have a personal relationship with my Parkland Messiah. The M for Messiah. That happens to be my name is M, but Mussolini also put M's everywhere. She taught me a lot of things about Benito Mussolini. Okay, and he was actually the first military enemy of Adolf Hitler, and he had a Jewish mistress that was his shadow mistress that was following him around. That she was the one they called the inventor of Mussolini. They called her his wife. She was not his wife, but she was more of his wife than his wife Rachel. Okay, Mussolini means Jacob, and Jacob worked as a slave for 14 years to get with Rachel. Benito Mussolini did not want to be a slave to get with Rachel. What he did is he saw her, she turned down his marriage proposal. He saw her dancing with her boyfriend. He snatched her out of his arms, dared the guy to fight him, dragged her to a taxi cab, and then drug her to her mother's house. Her mother said, Benito, if you do this again, I'm going to call the police. He said, right. He left. He returned with a loaded revolver, okay? And he pointed it at her mother, actually. But he didn't intend any of those bullets for her. He said, 6 bullets in this revolver, and I'm going to put one in Rachel and make sure she's dead, and then I'm going to put the rest of those bullets in myself. Essentially, I'm taking her to hell with me if she does not agree to marry me right freaking now, okay? And of course, that's a terrible way to behave. And Rachel Mussolini wrote the books about him because she said, there's nothing to whitewash about this man, and I'm not going to whitewash. I did not want to. She did not want to marry the man for obvious reasons. But what she told her mother at that point was, Benito Mussolini and we've known each other since I was 7 years old. She said, I loved him since I was 7. I just never wanted to marry the guy, okay? Because he's got all these women, chasing around, screaming like it's Beatlemania. And Rachel Mussolini was, she's my kind of woman. She's very humble. She's so humble, she hates the spotlight. She did not want anyone to know that she is the wife of the man who was able to bring down a first world cradle of democracy with a march on Rome where nobody dies. Okay, the police are notified and the military's notified. Any communists, any enemies of his party, any socialists, anyone who doesn't like him, everybody treat these black shirt fascists like they are enemies invading Italy to take Rome, foreign conquerors. And not one person, if there were any bullets fired in that march on Rome, nobody got killed, okay? So it was a bloodless transfer of power overnight in a first world cradle of democracy. That would have been more difficult than Donald Trump's deal with Capitol Hill, where a few people died and there was like a siege on Capitol Hill. It would have been more likely for him to remain in office as president and become a dictator than for what Mussolini did, because of the fact that Donald Trump was a very, he had government experience. He was a president. He was a billionaire. Benito Mussolini had a criminal record, okay? He got kicked out of school for taking a knife to school and stabbing students. He didn't have a very good education. He did not have a good work history. And he was a paper guy, dude. He had a newspaper. He went from being a newspaper guy with no government experience, no government qualifications, a criminal history, and this political party that is not a democracy, and a political party that is like in favor of a absolute monarchy, absolute theocracy, dismantle democracy and create a dictatorship. I mean, so like his chances of overnight going from being a newspaper guy to being prime minister to being dictator. When there's a declaration of siege called by the prime minister, okay, military is contacted, police are contacted. Why the hell is this guy not arrested? Why are there shots not being fired, live rounds and stuff? Why is there no bloodshed? Overnight, Rachel is pinching herself, wondering, is this even possible? What she thought is, I don't know what he was thinking, but the march is going to maybe stir up some support for the party, maybe get the party some recognition, because maybe get some more seats in office, more power, political power from the fascist party. But no, overnight he's prime minister, and then very quickly he's dismantling democracy, and he's making it very clear to everybody, I'm dismantling democracy, I'm creating a one-party state, I'm turning this into a dictatorship, because what it's going to do is it's going to, I'm appointed essentially. He said he believed he was a spiritual descendant of Caesar Augustus, spiritually, okay? He had seances, held seances of spirits, okay, of Roman Caesars and the fathers of Italy and the fathers of the Roman Empire, okay, and he even liked Romulus and Remus, the twins who founded Rome, that nursed at the breasts of a she-wolf, okay, and I always think of Queen Esther, like the she-wolf, Benjamin, the tribe of the wolf, the right hand of Jacob, the one that could not go to Egypt because Jacob, who became Israel, he loved. That's what Mussolini means as Jacob. Jacob was a slave 14 years to get with Rachel. Mussolini risked everything to get with Rachel. It's either I'm getting with Rachel or she's dying and I'm dying, or he's going to prison or something, doing what he did. Even after she agreed to marry him, I mean, he's still risking some serious prison time for that. For some reason, though, he was like above the law. And I'll tell you why. Samson, as long as he had his hair, he was killing 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. I mean, I think that's symbolic of the Democratic Party, because those Philistines were those were illegal immigrants on contested territory, where you always place the tribe of Dan. Okay, the tribe of Dan is also another one of those tribes where the wolf is assigned as one of the 7 animals assigned to the zodiac of the tribe of Dan. But the tribe of Dan also has other animals assigned to it. Jacob said Dan is a serpent. He strikes the heel of the horse goes backwards with the rider, and their plans, all their plans are gone. They don't even know what hit them. A much, much smaller venomous animal and a much, much, much larger, stronger animal with a much, much stronger and more intelligent, the most intelligent of all animals. You would think the most powerful of all animals is the human being on the back of the horse. And that little serpent just comes out of nowhere and strikes the heel of that horse, and that horse goes backwards, and they're both screwed. Their plans are kind of screwed, So in the end times, the death rides a pale horse, okay? Jesus Christ rides a white horse. And then there is the conquering bowman who has the highest kill count of anybody that the world has ever seen so far. He conquers better than anyone the world's ever seen so far. The best conqueror in the world so far was a bowman, Genghis Khan, with 100,000 men on horseback who were poorly armed. I mean, they could fire a bow really well, but they didn't have good armor, and they were very poorly educated. And Genghis Khan was an orphan who did not have anyone to show him how to be a man, or a mother show him how to, He would have had mommy issues. If you don't have a good mother, that can cause all kinds of problems with your relationships with women. And then if you don't have a good father figure, how does he learn how to be a real man? He said, what made me escape as a slave and rely on where I get my next meal from, and what led me to unite the divided tribes of Mongolia that were warring against each other into something stronger, and ride off with 100,000 men, conquer 40% of the world, and govern millions of people, and create the first successful, large, significant postal service. I mean, a postal service back at that time was actually extremely difficult because you have to have people. You want to be able to guarantee the people that their mail is going to get to the address that they're mailing it to. That's very difficult in it when you got 40% of the world and people are traveling on horseback and there's no phones. A postal service is very freaking difficult. Okay, especially because you really do need to have like a kind of a guarantee that you're getting that mail where it's going to get there. Okay, and to do that is going to be very freaking complicated, and he was the first man to do that. Another thing, that was a time where there were inquisitions. Okay, there were crusades, there were jihads, there were all kinds of the anti-Semitism and the coming from Christians and coming from Muslims and stuff like that. The religious bigotry at that time it was insane what they do to you over differences in dogma. Okay, it's so foreign to what we know today, and yet he told people, he said, you know what, I am the wrath of God right now. I am successful. It's not because of my strategy. It's not because I'm an intelligent man. It's not because I'm anyone. I had a good teacher or anything like that. It's not because I'm wealthy in any way, shape, or form, inward, outward, or well. I guess after you conquer that much, you have a lot of wealth. But what he was essentially saying is that what was responsible all along for him being an escaped slave, from him getting his next meal, for him uniting those tribes and conquering such an enormous percentage of the world that has that's better armed, that's better educated, toppling empires that are so much more sophisticated than he was. Basically, he was illiterate. His men were so illiterate. That's one of the reasons why Genghis Khan has so many negative things said about him, and you actually would be very surprised about to learn the good things about him is because of the fact that when you have an army of a bunch of men riding horseback like Native Americans, firing bows and arrows, who are not very educated, they are not the ones writing the history. The ones who are writing the history books are, in fact, some people that are very, very jealous and very, very humiliated because, it's one thing to get defeated by somebody who's got like better tanks and better planes, and it's a lot more humiliating. Like if you have a very, very advanced civilization that is outnumbering these people that are riding around on horseback, firing arrows, and sleeping outside or sleeping in tents. And where I come from, tent dwellers, okay, those are bums. Those are like people addicted to like the crystal meth. Those are the low lives, okay. And also, I mean, he was defeating back then, the Caucasians, the European Christians were, and of course Jews and Muslims, of course, they consider themselves superior to these Mongolians who seem quite barbaric in comparison. Okay, and their weapons seem so superior, and their god seems so superior. But I believe I have a personal relationship with Hagar and Ishmael. They would not like what Islam did to the Arab world, because Ishmael was a bowman. Okay, so Genghis Khan, they were bowmen, most successful conquerors. I think Hagar and Ishmael, they were partially, they were kind of the wrath of that was helping him, because they would be the most offended by what has happened, because she was the princess. Hagar was, okay. Ishmael was said to be a wild ass of a man, but Hagar was not actually. She was the daughter of Pharaoh. Okay, Pharaoh. Some of those pharaohs were very, very amazing people, and I mean, where did the dreams come from for that pagan pharaoh who's considered theologically a pagan divinity? It was the dreams of Pharaoh that saved the greatest and the only superpower on earth and all of the surrounding nations. And it was the dreams of a Hebrew and his ability to interpret the pharaoh's dreams that made that happen. But You need Pharaoh the pagan and you need the monotheistic Hebrew. You need them both, okay? If you just had one without the other, okay? If you had Joseph telling Pharaoh, I can't hang out with you because I'm associating with someone who is corrupting my morals because you're a heathen, you're a pagan, you're an idolater, and people worship you theologically, and I just can't take that, you know. And a lot of monotheists are just so proud of how Abrahamic monotheism is the only way, and you idolaters are nobodies, you know. No, Joseph was extremely wise to not do that, okay? Because it would have cost him and it would have cost a whole shitload of people their lives, slow, agonizing deaths of the greatest superpower, the only superpower in the world, and the surrounding nations. That probably would have actually been the death of Abrahamic monotheism. And if that doesn't sound bizarre enough, that Joseph making himself a slave to a pagan divinity was the best thing that ever happened to him, made him control his household, his possessions, and his entire kingdom. But Cyrus the Great, okay, inspired by Queen Esther, who used a whole bunch of illegal means of breaking multiple of the Ten Commandments and sexual immorality and deception, lies, and all that stuff, and how that caused the Queen of Iran to get thrown off a boat and protects the Jews in Iran to this day more than in any other Islamic country in the world when Iranians hate Israel and the biggest threat to Israel. Cyrus was inspired by her, and Cyrus, God made him the anointed one. God called him the Messiah. Did God call Moses or Elijah the Messiah? Uh, God actually wanted to kill Moses, okay? And God was very angry at King David. God was very angry at a lot of his prophets, you know. Was God ever angry at Cyrus? There's nothing that says he was. There's one verse that says, although Cyrus does not know me, I'm going to make him the most essentially successful person that's ever lived so far. The first person that I will acknowledge as Messiah, okay? And the historians called him the savior of the savior of Abrahamic monotheism. Cyrus the Great was actually a peacemaker. The best and most successful peacemaker that has ever existed came from Iran, inspired by Queen Esther from Iran, she was queen of Iran, and yet he wanted to be king of Babylon. Why did he want to be king of Babylon? Because Babylon happens to be the most notoriously wicked city in the scriptures, that the beast of the apocalypse and the woman that rides the beast and the Antichrist is supposed to come from Babylon, okay? Babylon the Great is supposed to be one world government, okay? Babylon the Great is supposed to dominate the earth, and Babylon the Great is supposed to institute this receive the mark of the beast on your forehead or your hand, or you will not be able to buy or sell or any of that. So it's supposed to be so incredibly, extremely wicked. Mother of harlots. He actually loved the mother of harlots, and God's calling him a Messiah because he loved Inanna. Her title's mother of harlots. She wears a lot of the jewelry that she has a lot of the titles and the descriptions of the whore of Babylon, and well, she's from Babylon, and she happens to. Temple prostitution was the way that she got the Arabs to be the most respectful of unveiled women. It used to be the Arabs were the greatest superpowers when they followed her type of theology. She's the one who started civilization, okay? Queen of heaven, lady of victories, lady of battles, the goddess of warfare, the goddess of beauty, the goddess of politics, okay? And so she was like, that was before Abraham, that was before Yahweh was anything. She was like already creating these incredible superpowers. And back when the Arabs prayed to her, create a statue of a naked goddess and who allows temple prostitution and pray to her, they could go attack Israel and easily defeat them and destroy the temple and take the Jews away in captivity, and then feel sorry for the Jews and then go create Israel and spend all the money to build up their temple again. And that's how powerful the Arabs were back when they worshipped the whore of Babylon. Now, all of the Arabs combined have ganged up on Israel, which has more women in their military percentage-wise than any other military I know of. Last I checked, more than 50% of the officers in the Israeli military are female. Okay, and they'll pose in like their thongs and their panties and they're holding guns and stuff. They do not look very intimidating. And like these Egyptians in the 6 Day War, these guys are huge. I was watching them training. They're a lot larger than the Israeli guys. They're athletic. Look, they're built more athletic. They're built more more muscular. Not just that though. They are armed with very modern weapons from the Soviet Union in the 6 Day War and Yom Kippur War. They're armed with freaking an air force, a modern air force. They are armed with modern tanks, and they're physically freaking stronger, and they're more freaking likely to commit scorched earth policies and torture and be more vicious and all these things. And this little tiny Israeli nation that is half the military is like female. They hand their freaking asses to them. Okay, back and this is now and these are the and they're like half secular too. Or no, Israel was like 90% freaking secular at the time too. Back when the Arabs were praying to the mother of harlots. Okay, they that was a time where the Jews were not 90% secular. Okay, they were more prayerful, and they even had a temple even. But when the Arabs were praying to a prostitute, female, queen of heaven, goddess of beauty, goddess of warfare, goddess of politics, goddess of temple prostitution, at that time, they easily kicked the rear ends of the Jews and took them away as captive, and then they showed how incredibly powerful they were by taking them captive. Daniel was taken as a very favored by Nebuchadnezzar. As some of these Jews were very loved by, treated extremely well, but treated better by Babylonians and pharaohs than they were even treated by their God of Abraham. And then Babylon goes and builds them back up, and Babylon saves them. Okay, Babylon spends all this money building a temple that is for a religion and a god that freaking hates them more than any other deities in the whole world. Okay, speaks more negatively about their Queen of Heaven than anywhere. The prophet Jeremiah goes and tells the people, if you don't stop burning incense to the Queen of Heaven, I'm gonna freaking all these terrible things are gonna happen to you. God's gonna kill your kids, and you're gonna all these plagues and famines and stuff like that. And they were scared and they listened to him at first, but eventually, what they told him, you know what they told him? They eventually realized this God is such a hypocrite. He's such a bigot. But when we burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, when we pray to her, she's really nice to us. When we stop our devotion to the Queen of Heaven, all these terrible things happen to us. I mean, look at Job. He does all. He's the most righteous man in the world, and how does he get rewarded for it? His family gets violently murdered, and he gets afflicted with diseases and nightmares and confusion because he doesn't know if it's coming from God or the devil. He assumes, I must have done something really freaking wrong. His whole life becomes a nightmare as a reward for his good behavior. Whereas these people, they found a Queen of Heaven who, if you don't have to be very nice. She's unconditional love of a mother. Okay, a black bear fights to the death. If someone's threatening her cubs, okay, she will send a much larger bear running away because she has virtues that apparently this God of Abraham does not have. And am I being evil for blaspheming him? No, I love him, okay? If you love your father, you are going to correct him. If he is behaving in a way that is harming people, the loving thing to do is to follow your conscience, not cower in fear and say, it's foolish to think a human could know better than God. The Bible says Moses knew better than God. God was going to commit a bigger genocide against Jews than the Third Reich, than Nazi Germany. Okay, he was going to prove to the whole world right then and there, if it wasn't for Moses not letting go, when he asked him, leave me alone, Moses would not leave him alone. He was going to go prove to the world that Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich treat the Jews better than the God of Abraham does. Right after he leads them out of slavery, telling everyone, "Let my people go," and how much I love them, and killing all these babies and children because they don't have the blood of a virgin lamb smeared on their doorposts. Okay, I am not. If you think I'm being evil for condemning that kind of behavior, that kind of behavior, if that was done by a human being, okay, you would want that human being hung as a war criminal, or you would not want anyone hung as a war criminal. Okay, that would be like the most qualified, okay, because that's a worse genocide against the Jews than any of the people of the Third Reich that hung as war criminals, okay, and the only thing that stopped it, Moses repeatedly told Yahweh, "Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. You will be the laughingstock of your enemies. I will be the laughingstock." And it'll be ludicrous, man. You lead your people out here to do that to them, and what will they think? I mean, he told God repeatedly with the right choice of words how stupid, how ludicrous that idea was, and how mockable. It says, quote, "God repented of the evil that he planned on doing to Israel. We need good lawyers. Meadow Jade Bullock, great lawyer. She teaches me everything. She teaches me so much." And that is precisely what we need. If Moses would have bent the knee and said, "God knows best, how could I dare think I know better than God?" that would have led to the death of over 99% of the Jews on the planet. Something to ponder, something to think about. And think about Nineveh, okay? For 40 days, God was telling them, this is going to happen at this time, at this day. It did not happen. Somebody was restraining it, preventing God from being able to fulfill his word, his prophecy, okay? Jacob fought with God. Jacob won. Israel means contender with God. So instead of Jews being Bolsheviks and fighting with God that way, I mean, they do, it's in their blood, and that's great. They have a very good reason to fight with God, okay? There's another way to go about it, okay? Okay, choose someone else. Have loyalty to them like Jacob's loyalty to Rebekah, telling him to do many things that were disobedient. Steal, lie, take what is not yours, take what someone else has worked for that you would do better with than Esau, and go, and which leads him to go fight with God and win. And he uses forbidden superstitious magic to change the colors of his sheep to deceive someone for financial gain. He did a whole bunch of things he was not supposed to. So go figure. Mussolini means Jacob, and he dies the feast of St. Louis de Montfort, and St. Louis de Montfort's the only saint that actually glorifies Jacob doing that, breaking the law, loyalty to a woman who is not God over God, and expecting to get more out of that than obedience to God. And then he was hung upside down the next day on the birthday of Hirohito. Emperor Hirohito was an eccentric butterfly collector, high priest of Obon festival, which means to hang upside down. Caterpillar hangs upside down to be transformed into a new creation, a butterfly that does not resemble its former self. And that was Emperor Hirohito's hope for all of these despicable creatures, including Nicholas Jacob Cruz. 1958, I think, is his number. Did you know 1958 is the number I have on my only musical CD album? It's called Prince, okay? Meadow's boyfriend, Brandon means Prince, Well, Prince was from the Twin Cities, and it says 1993 and then 1958. 1993 was when the Mortal Kombat character Jade came out. Last Christmas, Emperor Hirohito gave me 3 Mortal Kombat characters that used to be human beings, spirits that were trained at Raiden's temple. Raiden, Reptile, and his favorite Mortal Kombat character is Jade, because there's a Chinese proverb, gold has a price, jade is priceless, because jade is divine. Jade stone was given from Amaterasu to the first Japanese emperor to be treated as if it was her, charged with kami, charged with her spirit, with a circular mirror that she looked into, and the circular mirror became haunted as well, to be treated as if it was her, okay? And that is why the Jade Stone is So much more than. How can you put a price on that? Hey, also, if you know anybody that has like a possession of something that belonged to Meadow Jade, my Messiah, why that would be important, I will explain later, okay?